Welcome to Soltron. This is the video review of the Season 5 Glory Alliance Pulis figure. And you can see this guy is about the same size as the Metal Cardbot S Blue Cop, and he's much smaller than the previous season combiner. And this guy just came with instructions for the weapons and for transforming the vehicle. And then here's the 360 view of this guy. I think he overall looks pretty good. He's got a lot of detail and he looks very busy. There's a lot going on and there's not a lot of unifying colors to him. It's just very busy looking with all the greebles and extra little pieces that are all over him. And you compare that to like Blue Cop, who looks very clean and has nice color separation. And I think I definitely prefer Blue Cop in this case. This guy, he's cool in his own way, but he just doesn't have that like nice, clean, sharp look to him. He's very busy. If we take a close look at his head sculpt, something they've done differently this time is the heads are no longer headmasters. They are just regular heads, which I think is an improvement because this head looks pretty cool. And then we compare that to like the last season head, which looked like this, which was pretty rough looking. I think the paint on the last season looked very cool, but it just doesn't really look like a head. It's too long and gangly looking, and it clearly turns into a robot. Whereas these heads still are supposed to retain that kind of look. I wouldn't be surprised if they make some transforming heads that turn into robots later. But I think he just looks a lot cleaner. His face is a lot smaller, but I think the head sculpt is kind of excellent. And the gold paint is some of the best gold paint I've ever seen used on a robot. It actually looks like gold. It's a little bit brownish, but on camera you can see it's looking very nice and yellowy. So really excellent gold paint on this guy. They really nailed that, so that's really good. The gold paint here. The other gold paint here kind of looks a little more brown and bronzish, and then here is not looking that sharp. But on the head and chest, where it counts, it looks really good. And you can see he's got a bunch of accessories on his body. He's got this, I guess it's a raptor. He's got like a raptor head in his chest. He's got, when you saw him on the back, he has like these little raptor legs back here. The whole raptor's body and the tail is right here, and you can see the arms there. And then you got the whole sword is a phoenix, which is actually pretty great. And then he also has, like if that's not enough accessories, he also has these shields, which are clipped onto the side of his legs right now. And he's got these gun weapons here as well. So he's really loaded up with weapons, maybe too many. But I guess this was like a deluxe one that came with these animals that turn into weapons as well, which is pretty cool. So we'll start with the raptor. It's very easy to just pull the head off. It's just tabbed in here and here with friction tabs. And then you need to get this piece here, which is like a arm shield. Well, I guess I'll pull off this blade first, and then you can get this. And kind of the same issue with the other figures in this series. Some of these clips are just way too tight, and they definitely need to be loosened up with a hobby knife. And then you can grab the legs of the raptor back here. Okay, and then we got the raptor body. We'll go ahead and get his little arms move forward. We'll get his tail at a more natural angle. And then the head just very easily just slides into here and then clips into place. And then you're gonna get this backpack section, and that's going to clip in here, which is very cool looking. Definitely seen some T-Rex robots that have had that before. And then you just peg his legs into these clips here. And these clips are actually at the right tolerance, so that's not too bad. And there you get this little guy. And he's, I don't know, he's not great. And then his weapon mode is pretty weak too. He just becomes like this purple blade that's kind of underslung. I'm not super into it, even with the T-Rex head on the chest. I think this guy's kind of a throwaway. He's not that great, especially with his legs just getting on the back of the robot's legs. And then he's got that nice gold paint too. But he does have like full leg articulation, which is pretty nice. And then his swiveling arms. And he does have this stupid animal head turning pivot, which animals don't really do when they're cocking their heads. And then he can open and close his mouth. But he feels pretty good. He's not too cheap feeling, but there's a little bit of cheapness to him. He does have screws in him, but he kind of feels like a toy that's just like everything's pegged and glued together, if you know what I mean. Kind of like a gashapon or something. But I think the main event is definitely this Phoenix sword. Like, this sword is really gorgeous, and of course his weak little wrists can't really handle it. But man, he looks so cool wielding this emerald sword. And I really like, you just tear off one of these shields with a lot of force, and then you can put that on his forearm. And I think that looks so cool, having this parry shield with the sword. I think this combination right here makes the set for me. This looks so cool. And then with all the nice gold paint on this guy, he looks very regal and dignified. So nice work on that. But let's take a closer look at this sword. And of course I like to collect robot swords, so even if I sell this guy, I'll probably keep this for myself. But you can see it's got our great translucent green plastic, which I'm always a fan of. And unfortunately, the shaft for this sword is like 4 millimeters, so it will not fit in a Transformer's hand. It's too loose. And you can like unpeg the wings here, you unpeg the legs down here, and then you unfold the legs, which are these green parts, and then the feet are on ball joints too, so a nice little extra bit of articulation they didn't really have to do. And then you just get the legs, there are the wings. Oh yeah, and you have to unclip the tail from the back and rotate that. And then you just fold the wings up in kind of a natural looking pose, and you're going to rotate the head around. And the Phoenix is always kind of like standing in a standing pose like this, which is okay. It would be nice if it could get into a flying pose, but its head won't articulate up enough. You can get everything else in the right spot to make it look like it's flying, but its head cannot look straight up, unfortunately. But yeah, this is a really pretty figure. He does feel a little bit cheap in places, like even he has that feel of like those Transformers weaponizers. Even though he does have screws, he actually just feels like everything's just pegged and glued together. Yeah, he feels kind of like a model kit, so I'm surprised that he does have screws in him, because he doesn't feel that solid, but it kind of doesn't matter. He's kind of a small accessory, so he can get away with that. But obviously, I think this guy is like the gem of the set. And then we get Pulis himself, or Pulis, and you can rip off one of his arms back here, and you can see there's a little bit of wear on these tabs, which I'll probably have to sand down. And you can just peg that onto his forearm. There's no shaft for it to fit into his hand, unfortunately. He does have to have it on his forearm, which is kind of disappointing. But I think he looks pretty good with his shield and his pistol going. I think that's a pretty good look. Or you can have him dual wield. You can dual wield his shields. And I don't know, maybe you would think that these are swords, but they cannot be pegged on. They can't be pegged this way. They can only peg this way. And then his underslung peg is also facing the same direction, so it can only go this way. So I think these are just meant to be shields, which is kind of a cool idea. He's a cop, so he should be protecting and defending, so that kind of makes sense. So you can get him like double shielding and protecting somebody, which is kind of cool. Or we can just pull off both his guns from the back here. And there's another peg here. I guess you can get it under his forearm if you want kind of a Megatron kind of look. If that works better. Where did his... Huh. So this whole peg section just evacuated. somewhere. Oh, it's still stuck on the Raptor's back. It's right there. So it totally dislodged and stayed there. Cool. All right, I got that off the Raptor. Now it's pegged back in place. Again, the quality of this set is a little bit on the cheap side. It still feels pretty good, especially the more you handle it, you get used to it. But it's not quite Transformers quality. It's a little bit something under that. And it doesn't have that flexing plastic, so that might be a good thing or a bad thing. But yeah, he can dual wield these weapons. I think it looks better when you have them on the side of his arms with the scopes up, so you can at least pretend that he's aiming through these scopes. But it would have been nice if they included handles for him to do the shooting. So you can have him dual wielding in 2 directions, or you can try to get him shooting both of them in 1 direction. So not bad. Not a bad look at all. And then the guns themselves, I think, are kind of junky looking. They don't really capture a gun look so much, except for they have holes in the barrels at least. So yeah, that's a look at his accessories, and his articulation is maybe perfect. He might have perfect articulation. He's got a ball joint head. This piece in the back interferes with that, but you can unpeg the backpack a little bit and get that out of the way. And you can like cheat this in different ways. You can fold it the other way, fold it like behind his back if you need to, but it's technically rests right behind his head where it's constantly in the way. You can get a full outward motion on the shoulder here, and the wheels do a cool thing, like they move nicely out of the way. So you can get fully there, you get universal joints, so you get 360 there, you get a bicep swivel, as you saw, it is on a mushroom peg. You do get this awesome double joint elbow, which is deeply impressive. You do get wrist articulation, so you can get his arms pretty much in any pose. I guess the only thing he is missing is a butterfly joint, but he doesn't suffer too much for it. He still gets some pretty cool poses. And you do get hip swivel. The backpack gets in the way a little bit, and you do have to lift up his skirt piece, of course. And then he has these same universal joints on the hips, so you get full articulation in all directions, except for his backpack's in the way. And then he does have thigh swivel. He does have a kind of weird knee, which makes him a little bit awkward to transform. It's got kind of a double joint thing going on. And then he's got a cut back here. So you can get 90 degrees only on the knee. So I guess he's not perfect. And then he does have these ball joint ankles, which are kind of a little irritating because the toes, or the ankle is the part that has the ball joint. The toes are actually just like its own piece. So it can be hard to straighten that out correctly. You actually have to pose the heel, not the toe, because that'll just disconnect. Yeah, so you can get really dynamic looking poses out of this guy, which is perfect because he has that cool sword. So no issues there. Okay, well, the posing on his ankles is a little bit limited, so I was maybe a little bit overly complimentary, but he can mostly do whatever you're looking to get him to do. He's got pretty natural posing, so that's nice. And then transformation on this guy is kind of a mixed bag. I don't know if I'd say it's good. Of course, you're going to sandwich the legs together. You've done this 1,000 times with 1,000 figures. Actually, you should unpeg the back of his calves, which will become the sides of the rear of his vehicle. And then you can just point his toes, and the heels will just stay there basically. And then you're going to take the whole knee pad, and that's going to pivot down on these armatures. And then you're going to telescope or collapse his whole leg in here, and then you're going to fold his knee backward a couple clicks. So his leg will end up basically here. And then these panels also have another accordion joint, and they will accordion down into a more natural position. So you can see that's the rear of the vehicle. And then you get all this backpack assembly. And then he definitely is a shell former because his whole backpack is, what, like 50% of the vehicle? This is his backpack. It's a huge chunk of the vehicle. You're also going to unpeg his chest here and push it a little bit over his head, and you're going to be mindful of this tab here. That's going to end up in the shoulder pad. And then the shoulder pad also has its weird, funky kind of articulation joint, so you have to be mindful of that. But the arms are going to butterfly. Now that the chest is out of the way, he does have a butterfly joint. And then he's going to do this weird thing where this pegs into his hips. So you're going to peg that there, and then you just get the bumper in the correct position. You know it's in the right position because this tab will peg into that cut. You can kind of see right there. Or no, it's right. It's right there. Take my word for it. It's on the black plastic. But that's going to peg there basically. So you get, you're approximating a vehicle, and then this is going to be the nose of the vehicle. So that's going to sandwich between the two shoulder pieces. And that's going to peg there basically. And then you're just going to flip these down, of course. And that gets you your mostly vehicle mode. Obviously that needs to be cleaned up. And there's his vehicle mode, and it's not great. It's I would say it's actually kind of ugly. This is maybe one of the worst vehicle modes I've seen. It's very greebly. It's got this huge gap up here. The heels are just there. It's very not cohesive. And considering this guy is such a shell former, you would probably expect that the vehicle would look a little cleaner. And he's just kind of not. But I guess that's the aesthetic of this figure. It's kind of cool. He's got these half-hidden wheels in the back. But yeah, it's a pretty powerful looking vehicle, but it looks more like an SUV than a police car or anything. He's got all these clips on his body, which does help make him look a little ugly. And everything does peg and tab into place, but it's kind of hard while you're transforming him to figure out where everything goes, because everything can actually extend further than it's supposed to. So you gotta guess a little bit, and then things will gently start tabbing into place. So the transformation I wouldn't say is fun, because things can just kind of peg in an awkward way. And then at the end you're gonna just shove his guns up here, and then his shields, of course, will just tab right here in these gray sections, so they'll look very camouflaged. But yeah, that's about it for Season 5 Pulis. I'd say he's a pretty good figure at $25 on AliExpress. I think he's a pretty good pickup. Of course, I love him for this specifically. It's hard to recommend this figure. If you like what you saw, obviously you should go out and get this guy. But he is exactly like what you see is what you get. But he does have a combiner that's coming, which combines like all the animals, and this guy will become a torso. So I'll review that one in the future when it comes, and I'll see you in the next one.